we are live, but there'll be a link of this video playing on Twitter right now, and you should be tagged in that. But like, I gotta ask, like, who is your all-time favorite Celtic? And I want to caveat this two ways. A Celtic you've seen play.
Okay.
So from that generation on, and then, a historical Celtic.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I got to say, like my family we're all so different. I'm adopted. My older brother's adopted. Younger brother's not. Obviously my two folks, we're all super different. I'm like an artist. Older brother's super smart, kind of bookie guy. Younger brother's an athlete. The main thing that brings us all together is Boston sports, like for sure. So we've just always been big Boston sports fans forever. So I've been going to Celtics games since it was in the old Garden. I barely remember a lot of it, but like I have technically, seen, a lot of greats play, and I got the tail end of the Bird and era and all that. But like,
how old are you?
33.
Okay.
He played into he squeaked into the 90s.
Barely squeaked.
Yeah.
He the second he saw Jordan, he was like, I'm out.
he busted his back. I think the story is that he was like putting up a fence for his mom, and he didn't want anyone else to do it because he's like a good Midwest boy, and so he like threw out his back one summer like putting up a white picket fence for his mom, and then kind of never was really the same. But okay, all time. I mean, dude. Whew. I think I gotta go Paul Pierce, probably. I know you want to puke. So I was at Bonnaroo in 2008 during when Paul Pierce pooped himself and got taken off on his. You remember that? Of course you did, because it was the biggest Lakers. They blew the biggest lead in NBA Finals history. I was at Bonnaroo. Yeah, sorry. I was at Bonnaroo at the cinema tent, and we were like on mushrooms watching the Celtics come back, in the middle of the day before the festivities started. So that team was kind of my like that team was so incredible. And I actually talked to him on the phone once. Yeah, he was doing a charity thing at like the Boston Children's Hospital, and we had a family friend who was staying with us while their son was going through a surgery there, and he was going around talking to people, and he like called basically my aunt was like, oh, there's a bunch of young Celtics fans, and he was just like, hey Mark, like what's up? It was like 30 seconds, but I have a signature, Paul Pierce signature. Talked to him on the phone once, watched him poop himself, and then come out in a wheelchair and then just destroy the Lakers. And, that was amazing. I don't remember what happened the next couple years after that. I kind of blacked out what happened there. I don't really remember.
Do you want a quick refresher on what happened?
Not really. Not really.
2 years that followed that obnoxious Celtics championship that has since never been repeated, and honestly may go down as the final championship in Celtics history.
Well, we don't count bubble champs here. So we're still 17-16.
That was one of the hardest championships ever won and fought for. And let me tell you something: if y'all had won the Eastern Conference Finals and won the championship, you would be saying the exact same thing.
No doubt. We'd be like, oh, you got to count the bubble. What are you talking about? You got to count the bubble. So yeah, Paul Pierce probably. I mean, he just had that he's got the grandma head fake, like all of us unathletic white boys when we're playing basketball. That's we always doing the Paul Pierce. I don't know why it works. It makes no sense. He's like he wasn't very athletic necessarily, but just like clutch as fuck, good defender, good enough defender. I think the KG stuff is a little overrated. I know that's controversial, but like, I love KG, but I mean, he missed too many playoff runs. I know he established the whole center of that team, but so yeah, love Paul Pierce for sure. And then modern era, I mean, like I'm a huge Jaylen Brown stan. Huge. He's the man. Just I love his off the court stuff. I love his on the court stuff. I'm loving this masked Jaylen Brown domination going on. So Jaylen's probably my favorite. I mean, obviously Tatum is amazing, but I love Brown. He's kind of been my guy for the last few years. And yeah, man, I'm excited. I love the Celtics. They're crushing it right now. I mean, they've had a couple just collapses the last few weeks, but yeah, they like an incredible shooting team, great defense. Yeah, love the Celtics. So yeah, I'd go Paul Pierce for like all-time favorite Celtic. And then current Celtic, I'm going to go with Jaylen Brown for sure.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, no, you did not mistakenly click on the Bitcoin Ballers podcast. You are listening to another episode of Late Night Bitcoin. I am joined by none other than my good friend, the editor of the print magazine at Bitcoin Magazine, the guru of all things Bitcoin. His star is rising, but I don't mean that poorly. I mean that literally. None other than Mark Goodwin. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me.
Dude, cute, my brother. It's amazing to be here. Yeah, we met, just to give the folks back home, we met at a meetup long before the BM days. And I'm not even sure I had ever published anything yet.
No, you had. You had just.
I think I had maybe
one.
Just the Bitcoin dollar. Maybe had just literally like that week, probably.
Yeah, like it was. Yeah,
yeah.
Because I remember that guy like literally cornered you for like 20 minutes.
Oh
to
talk
Sparks, to you about it.
Sparks,
and I kept on being like, Mark, we're going and smoking.
Yeah,
come with us.
yeah. Exactly. And P was there as well, actually, too. And I think that was the night I met like everybody, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, appreciate the kind words, dude. It's some surreal stuff going on. It's a lot of fun. Happy to be here. Happy to play my role in doing this little editorial thing. A lot of fun. But yeah, dude, super pleasure to be here. I was checking out Samson last night and been popping in on a few of these, and I love the late night. I love the vibe. So always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me, for sure.
Appreciate you. And I mean, we have literally not even started, but I'm telling you right now, you're already going to be a regular on this show. So just be prepared.
Hey, man. Yo, I'm in. Yo, let's go. Anytime. So
I'm going to start us off. I could literally spend the whole hour talking to you about Lakers Celtics, but we're saving that for tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's ask the age-old question on Late Night Bitcoin.
Okay.
When was the first time you ever heard about Bitcoin, and what was your initial reaction?
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a really weird Bitcoin intro story. I was working in San Francisco in the bar world. I was working at this bar, Trick Dog, just bar backing, and we had this regular at the bar who would come in 2 or 3 times a week, right when we opened, during kind of like normal office hours. And, we always kind of wondered what he did, but we didn't really it's not really hospitality. You're not really supposed to like press on that. Usually they'll tell you if they want to. There's Blake Benthal. And this was in 2014, the tail end of it. And he came in one day and he was like, Mark, like I just bought a Tesla with Bitcoin. And this was back when that was Teslas were not really
cheap.
They were like still cool. It was like no one had really seen them. They had kind of like were just kind of creeping out. And certainly they weren't being sold for Bitcoin, and that wasn't like a thing. But he somehow managed to do that and whatever. And so I was much more excited about the Tesla thing than the Bitcoin thing. But I was like, oh, what the hell was that? I've never heard of that. And so he drove me around the block, San Francisco block, and kind of gave me just like a really quick rundown on what Bitcoin, sort of was. And he completely explained it to me. No explanation about monetary policy, nothing about scarcity. It was literally about, I took my first impression was entirely that it was just like a medium of exchange that you could just basically use dollars to, buy things online, that was uncensorable. Turns out he took over for Ross, and he was Dread Pirate 2.0, and he was running Silk Road 2.0. That's where he got all the Bitcoin. And he was just a regular at my bar. And then, of course, like a few weeks later, a month, I don't exactly remember when it was. And I was, still drinking and doing crazy stuff in the bar world. So some of my dates are a little hazy, but anyway, boom, New York Times comes out. It's our boy Blake. And we're like, oh my God, he was Dread Pirate Robert 2. This is crazy. Okay. That makes a lot of sense why he was able to be here all the time and, spending money at a nice cocktail bar, and why he had a whole bunch of Bitcoin to buy a Tesla with or whatever. So it all kind of clicked right away. But I actually had no it wasn't until like years later, and at the start of 2017, like a lot of others, when I started to see that, I was like, oh wait, the price of Bitcoin can go up. Like I literally didn't know that there was like an exchange. Like I didn't grok that there was an exchange price or halvenings or the 21 million cap or any of that shit. And I had actually helped a couple friends, you know, use Bitcoin. I think we literally just like sent stuff out of their like Coinbase account, like to Silk, like just all the worst things. We had no idea. We just thought it was like anonymous. I thought literally the point of it was that it was anonymous money, which it just very clearly isn't. It's transparency money, if anything. So it wasn't until 2017 when I like started to see it kind of popping up. And in the Bay, obviously, there's a lot of crypto companies. And I had just a little bit more exposure to people talking about it in front of me. And then I ended up kind of getting into the, I started working all the parties. I worked like Coinbase holiday parties, Ripple Labs holiday parties. Sorry, apologize, but it's true, And I actually worked Bitcoin 2019 as a bartender. And obviously I'd been in Bitcoin for a few years. I was like, I asked for those shifts because I really wanted to work them and like, listen to Snowden and shit. So that my first introduction was just completely like, it was a great introduction. I'm super happy. It's kind of a fun story. And he's out of jail and I think he's doing well and all that. I haven't talked to him in years since then, obviously. And I hope he's doing well. And I hope anyone that sets up drug markets and anything like that is doing well, because I think knowing your dealer and having a web of reputation is like the best way for harm reduction. And the problem that we're having with drug shit right now is that it isn't that. Like everyone's getting fucked up because they're not buying what they think they're buying, So I'm very pro, reputation based drug markets for that reason. And I don't really do drugs anymore. Been sober for almost 5 years now, or drinking wise, but
I was going to say that there's definitely an asterisk there.
Yeah.
I've broken that for you.
I'm California sober. I'm California sober, as they say. So I had absolutely no introduction to any of all the stuff that I like, all the things that I love about Bitcoin now. I had absolutely no introduction to. So, took years later for me to kind of understand that, disinflationary supply cap stuff is the name of the game. So yeah, kind of a weird intro story, but yeah, I'll take it. I wish I listened more, I wish I bought shit in 2014, 2015 and thought about it, but no, instead I just like helped my friend put 50 Bitcoin up his nose or something like that. Can I say that? I can say that on Twitter, right? Yeah. Who cares?
Yeah. Oh, this is late night TV. We don't have the powers that be at Bitcoin Magazine censoring us. Sorry, did I say that out loud? I mean, I have a similar story, but it's almost like the exact opposite in the sense that I was just trying to send pot to myself in college, and a buddy of mine introduced me to Silk Road, and I genuinely did not appreciate why you needed to anonymously do a transaction like this online.
Right.
And I will never forget. I turned to my buddy and I was like, right, but can't I just like put my debit card down on this website and just
right.
Like the Bitcoin was actually the turnoff for me.
Yeah.
And like in the same vein, like no curiosity, no desire to learn about this thing. And like I sometimes look back and I think I'm like, knowing my dumb ass, I would have like overshot and bought like just too much Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then it would have been like, oh, I have a Bitcoin. But then again, me being a dumbass, I'd be one of those people who's like, oh, I can't get access to my Bitcoin, or I lost it or whatever.
Of course.
So that age-old saying of you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve, like
10,000, 100 billion%. Yeah, for sure. And it's like, I'm sure I would have fucked it up in some way. I just know I would have. It's like, and I like Bitcoin was actually a big part of me getting out of, the lifestyle that I was living. I was like drinking a ton and doing a bunch of dumb shit and a lot of late nights and spending a lot of money on things that help you stay up late. And, there's, I don't think it's really an accident that, I'm about to hit 5 years of not drinking. And, I've been in Bitcoin for 6 and change, it's like that Bitcoin changes you kind of thing, like having something to, instead of going to the bathroom to, do bumps or whatever, I would like go to the bathroom to buy dips. Like literally I'd have my phone on my well, have my chart up, and I'd see dips, and I'd run to the ATM and throw my cash in from the night before, and like buy, and I did that for years, and it was a big part of me, like kind of having purpose and actually being able to feel like I could build something for the future. I had hope, and not to be cheesy, but it's like, it's true. I mean, I'm so thankful. I mean, there's never a rock bottom moment or anything like that, but like Bitcoin really did save my life in a lot of ways, just of like, it gave me a purpose and a thing to invest in. Cause when you're working in, San Francisco at that time, it was like peak tech. There was so much money flowing. We were just doing so many private events, and you'd make $300-$400 in a night if you were working at the right place with the right people, and you got the people drunk enough, and they tip you heavy and all that shit. And so you would just, money would come in and money would go out. I mean, it was just so, you would also spend $300 in a night. You'd go to your friend's bar after you got off, you'd drop a bunch of money, you'd swag them out, you'd buy a bag, whatever the fuck. And it was just like this stupid cash lifestyle. And then, I finally had a place to like store that energy, and then, 2017, the pop went off, and then I had, 2018 and really 2019. That was my favorite year of Bitcoin, because it was sort of this like, what the fuck did I just do? Like, like, wait, I don't really know much about Bitcoin yet. And I went to bed like every night listening to like Andreas, and Kaiser Report was a huge one for me. I just met so many, or not met, geez, I've kind of met a lot of them now, but was introduced to so many authors, so many great things from that show, and from Andreas as well. And then by the time 2020 came around, 2021, I was like educating friends, and I felt pretty good and was pretty set up. But yeah, no, Bitcoin's the shit. And I'm very lucky, very lucky to have been in the Bay during that time, and to have had, because it takes a couple exposures to it to take it seriously. It's like no one hears Bitcoin the first time and is like, I get it, and it's easy. I guess it's easier and easier now. It's the easiest time ever to orange pill anyone. I know we've talked about this before, but it's just like, you just pull the curtain aside, and you just point out the window, and you go like, look at how fucked up everything is. Like, remember, inflation is transitory. Remember all this, like, and then obviously, number go up, sort of dictates, everything. So, my family went from being like, Mark, you're crazy, to like, my brother bought me a, I told you so, Bitcoin mug. And that was one of the proudest moments in my life, so yeah, it was fun. It's fun. I love the Bay Area. It was nice. It was nice to be there during all that, for sure.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on just, while I do agree that, there's a lot more information today versus in 2018 or 2019, as far as, how screwed up the financial system really is. So it makes that argument a lot easier. I kind of am on the side though, where it's like, it's still really hard to orange pill people right now, given the climate, given the economy, given just what happened at the tail end of last year. But you better believe that the second we break 70K, we don't even need to get to 100K. The second we break 70K, every single person, in my opinion, that has like made fun of me for Bitcoin, I know they're going to come out of the woodworks and be like, hey, so like, can you help me figure this out?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for that wave when, because it always is. No one's buying when it's at 15K. Everyone is texting you going like, I told you it's dead, you idiot. You should have bought Tesla or whatever the hell people buy. I don't know. I don't know what other people buy. But yeah, you're right. Everyone's going to turn around it's going to be like 68,500, and everyone's going to be like, oh shit, I should probably buy. It's like, you had a year of bear market, man. Stack. But yeah, we'll be ready. We'll be more prepared, more tools, more education, more content. Yeah, we'll be ready.
I want to unpack, I think, two things you said before we really go down, like how fucked up everything is. So the first, I really liked this idea of a drug marketplace where the sellers essentially, like, their previous customers are leaving reviews and letting you know, like, hey, oh, I bought this pill. I had a really, really
Yeah.
bad time.
Yeah.
Would not recommend.
Yeah. No
Or,
dice.
or like, oh, dude, like you have to, like, this guy's the best. Like, help me understand how to dose it. Like, 20 out of 10 recommend. Oh my God. The number of overdoses that get solved by this problem, the number of arrests, quite frankly, the number of, kids in sketchy situations. Now, look, whether you agree with the usage of drugs in a recreational or even in an addictive environment, I think that's a separate issue.
Agreed.
I personally, I love this idea, but how do you get to that point? Like, ignoring the actual, like, the fact that 99% of these drugs are just deemed illegal in the
Right.
eyes of the law. Like, let me rephrase. How come Paxful can create what they did,
Mhm.
albeit they have now shut down, when in reality it was just like Silk Road? It allowed one person and another to create a transaction based on whatever they agreed upon terms. So if you said, hey, the only thing I've got are the mushrooms that I'm growing in my closet, and I'm like, all right, cool, all I've got is Bitcoin, I'll send you some sats for those mushrooms. Like, cool, we're good, we're done, adios. What I'm trying to
Yeah.
say is, like, should we go make Paxful 2.0 right now?
Yeah, I think you and I are we should be we got Chat GBT now, right? We can just have it whip up a code for a drug market. No, I mean, there's a lot of things to talk about there. I mean, for starters, I don't respect the law. Period.
Ooh, badass.
I don't respect the law generally. That doesn't mean I'm like breaking the law all the time or anything, but it's just like I don't respect the state. I mean, like, we all know damn well who's been running drugs in this country for years and years, who was dealing out crack to, and who wrote the laws that said, the white stockbrokers that get caught with a little bit of cocaine go to jail or don't go to jail, get a slap on the wrist, but the exact same drug in crack form. It's just like, we know that's the CIA. We know what's going on there. We know Biden wrote that drug law. Like, I don't respect that stuff at all. So I do think that, a black market is, like, knowing your dealer, knowing the stuff you have is the best form of harm reduction. Humans are going to do drugs, period. I also think a lot of drugs are bogus as fuck. It's like, I think coke is bogus. I think heroin, I've never done it. I think heroin is bogus. But I know people are going to do it, and I would rather them be able to, have access to it in a way that is safer, and safer means like some sort of web of trust, or some sort of ability to know what you're getting, test your drugs, all that stuff. Like, we really just need to switch so much of our thinking of the way we educate people. Like, I think we figured it out with like sex education in the 90s or whatever, where it's like, all right, everyone's gonna fucking bang, so why are we teaching abstinence? We should teach like safe sex. Okay, cool, great. Now we have a much better, that doesn't mean that you're endorsing doing bad shit. It's just like, people are going to do stuff. So let's teach people how to do it safely.
We did not eradicate teen pregnancy. Like,
no, of course not. And the war on drugs did not eradicate people doing drugs. It just centralized.
The war on drugs is over. It's just that drugs won the war on drugs.
Yeah. Exactly. So I don't know, like, what the answer is, like, exactly. But I do think Silk Road was probably the closest thing. And there are, of course, other dark markets. But it was a pretty special thing. And it was obviously a huge part in the story of Bitcoin. To have something at the get-go when, 50 Bitcoin were coming out every 10 minutes, and having this, this way to distribute Bitcoin, in that first epoch, and then in that second epoch, when 75% of all the Bitcoin that will ever be issued, there was actually a use for it. There was a monetization of it, being able to have something to use this thing, was humongous. And ironically, in the legitimacy of Bitcoin was like, coming from it being used for these reasons, which maybe a lot of people think are bad reasons, but you can't deny the economic implications of a market that used Bitcoin. So obviously free Ross. Yeah, man, I don't know exactly the answers, but like I hate the way that the state has. It's like what the hell were we doing in Afghanistan? It's like what were we're like sending people over there to protect poppy fields. It's like like 90% of all fucking opiates are coming out of that one place. It's like, okay, do you think that's a coincidence that we're there? It's not just about oil. It's, we have our relationship with Saudi Arabia. It's like Afghanistan had a lot to do with opiates, and and now we're seeing fentanyl coming in aggressively. A lot of it is coming from China, and it's killing people. It's like I've been really lucky, like personally, but also people around me. It's like I've been really lucky that none of my friends that were really into a lot of that stuff died. I mean, really, truly. But that was not so many people have been that lucky. And, I come from Massachusetts. I haven't lived there in, over a decade, but like Massachusetts got absolutely destroyed by the opiate epidemic. It's absolutely insane. Like how many of my friends, from the Cape and whatever were, they'd get in a car accident or something, some little innocent thing. They'd go snowboarding and bust their knee and get prescribed like 4 years worth of opiates. And then it's like, the next thing they're shooting up because they, and it's just, that happened time and time and time and time again. Again, not to anyone super close to me, luckily, but to a lot of friends of friends. And, I have to blame the state to some degree for that. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I would love to see, some sort of market like that, come back and be legitimized, because I do think it's the safest way, and it just acknowledges the truth, like the reality that, humans like getting fucked up, and they're going to get fucked up. So let's do it as safely as possible. And like, if Bitcoin can sort of help that a little bit, so be it. Great. We got a lot of privacy stuff to deal with Bitcoin now. I think a lot of the assumptions of how private all that stuff has been kind of rolled back. But we'll see what happens with, we're getting blinding path routing. We're getting non-source routing and Lightning. We're seeing, an eCash sort of revolution going on with Cashew and Fedimint, and we're going to see a lot of really awesome privacy tools, which I think will re-enable a lot of those markets. So I'm all for it. I mean, again, I'm not going to use them. I mean, hopefully I steer away from them. Yeah, no, really, truly. I hope to never touch that stuff again. Personally, I had my fun. I did my stuff.
I thought you meant the privacy tools around Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah. No, but that's a good point though, Q, because this is something that I think a lot of Bitcoiners are very dumb about, and that it's like you should absolutely have a list of hardware wallets, exchanges, decentralized exchanges, privacy. Like, have a list of all that stuff to recommend to people, but I don't think you should ever tell anyone what you actually use. I would never tell anyone where I store my Bitcoin, what it's on, how I spend it or what. Like, I just don't think it's none of your business, frankly. And I just think it's bad OPSEC. I mean, I'll happily give anyone recommendations, but like, I'm not going to tell them what hardware wallet I use or if I even use one at all or whatever. It's just,
I just keep all 500 Bitcoin that I have in my Strike account.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I treat it like a hot wallet, honestly.
Yeah, it's all on FTX. No problem. Yeah, no problem. No problem.
I've had a few different thoughts pop up. One thing just on the crack thing, the crack comments you made. My favorite quote, it's from the book and the movie, The Hate You Give, but they talk about how, they talk in this country about how crack is flown into this country. Show me one person in the hood who has a plane.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So I just wanted to add that color to that part of the conversation. But then I want to, focus this a little bit back to the Bitcoin of it all.
Yeah.
And I think you and I are on the same page that like Bitcoin being affiliated, used by, or in any way associated with the Silk Road, with shady black market drug dealers or whatever, that's not necessarily a deterrent for you or I. Now, your home state has arguably the largest villain against Bitcoin, who touts more FUD than
Mm.
any human being I think is possible. And like, I'm just trying to take low blow jabs at Liz Warren, but
Yeah,
the real
please.
the real question I'm trying to get to is like, is this stigma that Bitcoin has become associated with these things? And I think it's a little naive for us as Bitcoiners to say like, oh, it's not for drug dealers. Like, let me tell you, there are plenty of drug dealers who are operating on online anonymously or pseudononymously and specifically saying, pay me in Bitcoin.
Yep.
So whether you use it or not doesn't mean it's not existent. So, and nor am I saying that that's the only transaction happening in Bitcoin. It's a fraction of the transactions, but they exist.
Totally.
Does that stigma make adoption more difficult, or is it something that we could actually use to our advantage to help adoption?
I mean, I would say, if you want to be honest, it's like the US dollar is used a billion times, and I'm making up that statistic, but we'll round it down to a billion times more illicit and illegal activity and money laundering and drug running. I mean, JP Morgan was busted like 10 years ago with, a ship that they owned that had, tons of literal cocaine on it. It's like,
I just wanted to pull the statistic because you were on a roll, and I did
the
worst thing ever to interrupt you.
No. I don't think a billion is accurate. So a figure would be good.
My source is National Geographic,
okay.
And they came out in August 16th of 2009. So a little bit ago.
Okay.
There've been a lot of dollars have been printed since.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
But they said 90% of dollar bills, just any denomination, have cocaine residue on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and what percentage of UTXOs have cocaine mingled in them? Zero. So no, I mean, but yeah, of course. I mean, there's a stigma there that I think has to be shaken a little bit for certain people that have been, I would say, propagandized relatively effectively from the Elizabeth Warrens of the world, that it's this ocean boiling, drug money, right wing fucking thing or whatever the hell. And it's just like, no, it's literally not. It's none of that. It's for anyone. That's like the whole point. It's just so hypocritical. I mean, the Elizabeth Warren stuff pisses me off so much because people really trust her and really like her, and I don't really get that at all. But I can't deny the fact that she's incredibly popular. She's actually not that popular in Massachusetts, oddly enough. Massachusetts is a weird political place.
But it's like in Boston, I feel like she's massively popular, and then like
sort of, yeah. Boston's a little more liberal than but like Boston is like we'll randomly elect a Republican governor or mayor or whatever. It's like that's happened a couple times in my lifetime. And like when she ran for president, she didn't get she placed like 4th or something in the primary in Massachusetts. Like she couldn't even get votes in her own fucking state, So I think that there actually is more of a ability to sort of primary her, or maybe not necessarily. I don't know. We'll see. She is pretty entrenched, but like, yeah, this whole I'm anti Wall Street. I'm here to, I'm stouting or, spewing off statistics about, what percentage of, people are unbanked or don't have bank accounts. And then you're like literally putting out propaganda saying you're building an anti-crypto army. It's like, it's just literally incoherent to like her ideals. So yeah, I think there is a lot of stigma to shake. I don't know how much of it really is like Silk Road stigma anymore. But there definitely is an environmental stigma that has to be shaken for sure. And then, I think there was a huge damage done with FTX collapse and with Luna collapse. And, people see those headlines and, they're just like, oh, Bitcoin's broken. And it's like, nope, this actually really had very little to do with Bitcoin. Like if they were actually using Bitcoin and using it properly, a lot of this would have been resolved. You wouldn't have been able to commingle users' funds and whatever if you had proof of reserves and proof of liabilities, sort of coherently, articulated. So It was all the other stuff, and this was a highly regulated exchange and a highly regulated, banking system behind the exchange. And we're seeing failure in these incredibly regulated, banks, Federal Reserve, banks. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's hard for me to say what we need to do if that's preventing adoption or not. But I would say less the Silk Road stuff. I think that was a little bit more true maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. But now that we sort of recovered from the 2017 top, and we had the Michael Saylor kind of like, Ross Stevens kind of like treasury legitimacy, Tesla putting, some on their balance sheet, I think did make it much more legitimate. But there's always propaganda to fight. I mean, it's such a powerful tool for the individual that it's like, of course, the state is going to do everything they can to dissuade people from using it to like get out from underneath the central bank manipulators. The U.S. dollar system in the U.S. government, they're the biggest terrorists in the world. They've killed more Americans. Yeah. I know. I'm pushing all the buttons tonight, baby.
Let's fucking go. I love it. I'm so here for it.
Yeah. There's a great piece in the Next magazine written by Lola Leitz about you just looking at the stats of all this and, looking at the war on terror and looking at, it's like, oh no, actually the U.S. government has killed more Americans than terrorists ever even came close to killing. It's like, and that's not to say that, Americans weren't killed in terrorist attacks. Of course they were. And that's horrible. But how many Americans were killed, in these wars that never should have happened, that we were lied to about them existing. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, Lauren's right. Okay. Oh, wow.
Have you at least, if not read this book, watched the TV series?
No. I've heard about it, but I haven't.
Highly recommend.
Yeah.
It I think answers a lot of the questions that people have around 9/11.
Yeah.
It honestly, it leaves you asking very different questions, I think, than the more open to conspiracy theories
totally.
people like us have about that. But to your point, because I've been sitting on this statistic and I love sharing it anytime I can.
Yeah.
So Iran, my homeland, is often, especially now, labeled as just a terrorist supporting regime.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And one of the things in particular is like they're said to be funding Al Qaeda and the Taliban. What you alluded to earlier is
I know where this is going.
is exactly what I want to point out. They do not fund these organizations. The Taliban is literally the drug dealer of the Middle East.
Yep.
They sell everything from hashish to pot to opium. And opium is the drug of choice in Iran. So all of these opiate addicted Iranians go and buy from Taliban and Al Qaeda's drug dealers. And as a result, it looks like Iran funds Al Qaeda.
Right.
If that's the logic that we in the West want to use, by that logic, we literally fund El Chapo. We funded, oh my God, why am I spacing on Mr. Colombia? Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, Escobar.
Like, like it is fascinating to me the double standard we hold. And the reason I think, to be honest, man, we're probably going to stay on this topic a lot more.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about stable coins and other shit next time. Who gives
You're coming on the show very soon again.
Yeah, let's go next week. Let's go. Yeah.
How much, as I said earlier, the war on drugs is over because drugs have won. The stigma is dying. You're seeing it across the city of Oakland, the state of Oregon, I believe also Denver, if not the state of Colorado, have all started legalizing some form of psilocybin use.
Yeah.
We're seeing the breakdown happen. The state of Oregon has decriminalized all drugs, taking a nod from the country of Portugal.
Yeah.
So, but that stigma,
like
go back to the Reagan days and like that war on drugs was intense.
Oh yeah.
Like my parents still hold a very, very hard stigma against pot. I know.
100%. Yeah, no, same. My folks too. And what changed? With that was when it became decriminalized and legalized in Massachusetts. Their whole reason why they told me, years later that they tried it once. Sorry to put them on blast. But but they were always against it because it was illegal, and they, and some of my buddies, we got busted going, not to keep talking about Bonnaroo, but, we got pulled over and got caught with pot, and some of us had to go back and do a drug court thing and all that. And I think it was pretty much entirely about the legality and the stigma. It had nothing to do with, it wasn't that like they were worried that I was going to like OD on pot or get in a car accident. Maybe a little bit that, but like, that wasn't but it was the social stigma and the propaganda of when they were kids was so strong. Yeah, but no, it's wild. And getting back to the Al Qaeda stuff too, it's like, who funded all that? Like, who started that? Who gave him all the guns? Who funded Osama bin Laden? Who established Al Qaeda?
I just finished this today, actually.
Oh wow!
And this is a textbook.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
It unveiled to me a lot of, like, my dad has been a crazy conspiracy theory nut, as I'd like to label him. And honestly, he comes back home tonight and I'm gonna have breakfast with him tomorrow.
Fuck yeah.
I have a long list of things to apologize to that man for, because, like, dude, we have created these bad actors. We have literally antagonized, if not funded them for our own benefit, only to have them flip the script on us because they realized, like, wait a minute, they used Iran and then gave us the weapons to go attack Iran.
Yeah.
And then they supported that attack after they at one point were considered allies to them. They're going to just do that to us. Like, we can't let it get to that point. Like, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, you're absolutely right. Did you know the only time since World War I that chemical weapons were used in any sort of instance known is during the Iran-Iraq war? Saddam Hussein was using mustard gas against the Iranian military. Iran was complaining, and the U.S. turned its eyes, said, that's fine, that's okay, was giving them all these fucking weapons. So, of course, when Cheney gets back into power, well, he's got weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, because you motherfuckers sold it to him.
Yeah, exactly. I know, it's absolutely insane. I mean, so much of that came from downstream of proxy war during the Cold War, where, we, like, Afghanistan, that whole basically military operation was like a proxy war, against the Soviets. And we were, it's just like every decade we switch, we go from, we were funding these people for this decade, and then the next decade they're our enemies. And it's just like, no, I mean, I think that sort of, wool over the eyes of the public was a lot easier to do, in the Operation Mockingbird era, of sort of CIA funded propaganda and Radio Free Europe, and, just using the mainstream media propaganda machine to just, I mean, I don't think that stuff is really nearly as powerful anymore. It's like, it definitely still exists. It's everywhere, but it's like, we actually have alternative media. I can pull up a video chat and talk to somebody, across the, I'm not going to go to a movie theater like in 1940s and watch a propaganda thing where they make Japanese people look all caricatured-y and crazy. And, it's like that stuff of, like, making me, hate my brother that I don't know over there. It's like, no, it's like that doesn't really work anymore, because we can actually talk to them. And now we're seeing, it's like, okay, like, no, I'm actually with the people that are protesting in China and in Hong Kong and a lot of these color revolutions that are going on. I know a lot of them probably are CIA funded, but a lot of them aren't, so there's a breakdown of that propaganda machine, because of the internet in a lot of ways, that it also makes the propaganda more available too. And a lot of people have, obviously still eat that shit up, but it's like, we can have this conversation right now. There's people watching, we're not, there's no one like raiding our house because we're talking about the CIA. Yeah, I know. Yeah. They'll find my body in my bathtub tomorrow, but like,
I didn't suicide myself.
Yeah, exactly. I love living. It's great. Living is great. Let that be known. But yeah, no, I mean, the world has just changed so much with the internet. And Bitcoin is arguably, I mean, I think it's the biggest revolution in so many ways. But I think the internet is kind of Bitcoin wouldn't exist without the internet. And the Bitcoin revolution is arguably downstream from the internet revolution. And that interconnectivity of society and of people, it's just like, I don't hate my neighbor. I don't hate my, my European brother or whatever. It's like, but in the 40s and in the 70s and whatever, and that people were jacked up to go to war, and even a little bit after 9/11, I mean, they wheeled in all the TVs and they made us watch all that stuff and in school and tell us about extremists and the propaganda that was going on with all that shit. And a lot of people in America fell for it really, really hard. There was a surge of nationalism. There was a surge of enlisting and all that get go. And I don't think that's nearly as potent anymore. And obviously we had the internet in 2001, but it wasn't the same, not in the same way,
How much, and I mean, you're an old man. I'm still young. That one was for you, Dennis.
Yeah.
How much are there shades, at least? I'll rephrase. Do you see shades of that sort of rhetoric against drugs, the rhetoric we've seen used in that war on drugs, being used now on this war against Bitcoin?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think it is actually very similar, and that it's coming, downstream from, the powers that be or whatever. I think that, the propaganda is slightly different because of what, the actual mechanism is. But yeah, I mean, it's incredibly similar. I mean, anytime there's sort of some sort of like mass hypnosis or mass propaganda. I mean, they've been running these same demoralizing playbooks against, the citizens of the world and the working class for millennia, really. I mean, none of this stuff is really all that new. And I think a lot of the controllers of the free world have sort of, I mean, Rome went into Paris, went to the UK, went and founded America. It's like, we know about the sort of this Freemasonry trope. We know a lot of this stuff. Like, these manipulators are still there. They're still running things. And I do think that their power in many ways has gotten weaker and weaker as we've, kind of, established some of our own infrastructure, but in many ways also it's stronger than ever. And I think a lot of that power and manipulation has always been about the money. You control the money, you control the people. And you control energy, you control food, you control the people. And a lot of those things on a mass level are still controlled by, special interests, corporate interests, and then the shareholders of the Fed, the big four American banks, and then obviously the Federal Reserve itself, that very special privilege of being able to, be the lender of last resort. It's a very powerful like coalition, the US dollar system. And so, yeah, they're going to do everything they can to push Bitcoin away and delegitimize it in a social way, while also, I think, a big part of, the way I think the Bitcoin, future is going to kind of look for America and for the dollar. I think the dollar system needs Bitcoin arguably, more than the Bitcoin system needs the dollar. The dollar is hyperinflating, or okay. People toss that phrase around too much. The dollar is inflating. And we've seen, humongous, M1, supply increases, since the COVID lockdowns and the CARES Act and all that. And we've seen, I think it's something like 70% of dollars have been printed, in the last, like, I think since 2008 or something like that. And that's like, what are they going to do? And I think Bitcoin being this demand inelastic commodity database kind of thing. It's not really a commodity, not really a currency. It's a database. It's its own thing. But I really do see the dollar system attempting to co-op Bitcoin through state actors pushing, hey, let's use Bitcoin rails to dollarize the world. Let's try to get as many users using the dollar so that we have a place to shovel inflationary effects. It's very similar to the mechanism we set up with the petrodollar and why we were doing all that shit in Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East post, the Nixon shock in 71. That wasn't an accident, but I don't think a lot of the U.S. population necessarily knew that mechanism was being created. Now it's very obvious. Everybody knows what the petrodollar is. But when it was really at its peak, I don't think a lot of people really knew what was going on. And I think Bitcoin can kind of be that same energy commodity. And if we recreate that same system and we force everybody to buy dollars before they buy Bitcoin, and we force everybody to sell into dollars when they want to sell their Bitcoin, because, the only liquid pairs and the highest, trading volumes are all in US dollar denominated stuff, we're kind of recreating that same mechanism. So, it's no surprise to me when I see people that I question maybe being state actors or not, talking about being very excited about, putting stable coins on Bitcoin and stable coins on Lightning and creating more opportunities for Bitcoiners to buy government debt. And so, that's been probably the thing I've stuck my whatever in the ground and just being like, guys, stop buying fucking government debt. Like, we're Bitcoiners. What are we doing? Why are we jerking ourselves off about how we're helping the global South by giving them access to Tether so that they can have, it's just like, shut the fuck up. It's government debt. What are we doing? We're Bitcoiners. Why are we building more tools to buy government debt? Fuck the government. They're terrorists. They're horrible. They've killed more people than anyone else. It's the military imperialism complex. Like, fuck it. I don't want anything to do with it. Now, does that mean that, everybody should be 100% in Bitcoin, get off zero and not, it's like, of course not. That would be also irresponsible and will probably make you spend a lot more of your Bitcoin than you intend to, if you don't have the ability to weather, the very early stages we still are in within Bitcoin. Like, I understand it. The dollar is still a great economic tool in a lot of ways. It's just, unfortunately, to use the dollar, you are, putting your energy into a basically a terrorist organization, as far as I can tell. So yeah, I'm excited about some of these things. I don't know exactly how they'll all work out, but there's some of these Bitcoin-backed stablecoin things. There's these DLCs, and there's these kind of like interesting way, stable sats and these kind of things. And I'm curious how a lot of those will work. I'm still like hesitant about anything that's related to the dollar. I question that, something's going on there, but hey, they're not buying fucking treasuries, so that's a win as far as I'm concerned. And the only thing that will keep this Ponzi going and keep this, this dollar coalition, these, the money changers in power, is if we keep buying treasuries. And, some of the biggest buyers of treasuries are these stablecoin providers. And I don't think that's going to stop. I think it's actually going to get a lot crazier, when we actually see BNY Mellon, doing their digital dollar pilot. And it's like, yeah, sure, we have Tether and USDC, and Tether's up to 80 billion now, and USDC is probably down to like 30 or something like that.
I think the last thing I read, it was something like 10 billion has outflown from Circle, and then 9 billion has inflowed to Tether. It's like they've just been absorbing, or it might actually be like 10 billion in, 9 billion out. Something to that tune. But
I think Max posted a chart of like the the two, and it's just a total, and I'm sure there are good people that work at those companies and all that shit. I'm not trying to say everybody involved in everything is. That's kind of the scariest part about conspiracy in a weird way, is that it's like, I think a lot of people involved in it actually don't even necessarily know that they're participating in it in a lot of ways. Like, I think there are a lot of people that shill stable coins that genuinely think that they're banking the unbanked and like giving people access. And it's like, no, you're charging someone access to use your bank account. Like, that's what we should have learned from, the Silvergate, SVB, and a lot of these things. It's like, no, it's still counterparty risk. It's like, there's still a central issue where they can still blacklist your money. This isn't this wonderful technology. Is it better maybe than the hyperinflating, whatever their fiat currency that they're using in their country? Like, sure, in a lot of ways you could say that it's better for the user to have dollars, that citizen in that country, than whatever, maybe their local currency that is actually hyperinflating. But what are we actually building here? Are we building tools to dollarize the world and to sell treasuries to people in Indonesia, through stablecoin rails? Like, fuck that shit. I don't want to build that stuff. Like, that's not what this is all about, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
We've gone down this rabbit hole, so it's been opened. I want your thoughts because at a certain point, Luna was pitched exactly this way, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it was, oh, this is the stable coin. It's not backed by dollars. It's not backed by treasury. It's going to be backed by Bitcoin.
Yep.
And in case you've been under a rock, it was a whole scam. It was
What?
a giant fucking
What?
scam.
Oh my God, I gotta go. My money.
And
Yeah, I know. Algorithmic stable coins. It's like, that can get bad really quick. And it did, right? It's like it started someone attacked the peg and, 30,000 Bitcoin were liquidated on Binance. Where the fuck did that Bitcoin go? Where did all the Bitcoin go? Like, that's the biggest thing. There's an amazing piece called Conspiracy as Governance, written by the one and the only Julian Assange. He wrote it in December of 2006. And it just talks about sort of the function of how conspiracy works, and the sort of the mechanism that he uses to identify conspiracy is basically like set up a board and put up little posts or little bolts or whatever of all of the areas of the conspiracy of the things that you see of the power, and then take twine and tie it around and connect all of them, and then look at how they're all connected in these ways. And then how do you break apart that conspiracy? And it's like, oh, you clip the connections of these points, and you can actually cut the way that these powerful coalitions are facilitating power. But the scariest thing about the way that those systems work is that a lot of people, again, as I just said, like they don't know that they're participating in a much bigger, eviler thing. And that's like one of the scariest things about the powers that be, is that they've been hidden for so long, because they've hidden behind arguably good faith actors that are acting, very against humanity, but they think that they're acting in a really good way because they're being fed, something that's, there's this, that kind of Hegelian dialectics where you create a problem, you propose a solution, people take the solution, but then there's actually an unintended outcome that occurs by people, reacting to that created problem that actually is the thing that these powers that be are looking for, right? I can't necessarily think of a great example at the moment, but that sort of mechanism is very prominent in the US dollar system. And it's like it's this shit is obscured and fugazi by design. It's like we're not supposed to understand how the overnight repo rate works and SOFR and the federal funds rate and all this shit. Like we're not really supposed to know how that stuff works. And now we got all these like decentralized autists, staying up all night and crunching numbers and looking at all these things and seeing how interest rate manipulation, how it's really dictated everything, and rates actually really dictate everything. And it's not about balances, it's about the rates of money. It's wild. It's the dollar system is insane. And that's what I wrote this book about. The Bitcoin dollar is all about that. The first half of the book is just about the history of the dollar system and looking at, the rate manipulators. And one of the most interesting things about it that really blew my mind when I was looking into it is that, every important federal, Fed chair has been nominated by one party and then renominated by another. I actually think I have the notes right here. Let me just make sure I get it all.
Wait,
right.
But, every Fed chair essentially has been bipartisan in that way?
So Paul Volcker, who's kind of the Hefe of rate manipulation, he's the GOAT. He was the 12th chairman of the Fed, 79 to 87, nominated by Democrat Carter, renominated by a Republican Reagan. Greenspan comes in as the 13th chair. He was the longest chair ever, 87 to 2006, nominated by Reagan, then renominated by Bush Sr., then renominated by Clinton, and then renominated by Bush Jr. Then Ben Bernanke comes in 2006 to 2014, nominated by Bush Jr., then renominated by Obama. Then we had Yellen for like 10 minutes. And then Jerome Powell comes in, nominated by Trump, and then renominated by Biden. It's just like, what is this purple party bullshit? What is this? And, it's just fugazi. It's crazy. But these are the people that really run the world, that really run, the US dollar system is like is interest rate manipulation. And these people are, like that's sort of what the deep state is kind of these these people that are nominated and elected by the people we elect, but we have no, like, we can't vote on who's the Fed chair, you know,
which is crazy.
Yeah. And like, do we really think that if, you know, Trump won again, that, you know, Powell wouldn't still be the, you know, of course not. He would still, it's like, but it's like crazy to think of how they, you know, they frame the parties as being so ideologically different. And, you know, if this happens, it's the end of the world. But if we, you know, but it's like, but at the end of the day, it's like the same people are running the CIA, the Fed, the Treasury, you know, it's like, so it's so hard to really like get a grasp on what's going on because you know, it's all done, you know, behind closed doors. Yeah, it's wild. But I love, like, when I was, I really dug in. There's a chapter in the book called the Nakamoto Accord that's sort of a play on the Plaza Accord, which was Volcker's, you know, it was the first time there was coordinated central bank manipulation. The G5 at the time all got together in this hotel in New York. And that's when they, you know, decided to devalue the U.S. currency, you know, extremely against all these other currencies because it had gone so strong because he raised rates up, you know, to double digits. It was like 10%. You know, and so this idea of kind of the Nakamoto Accord of kind of like Bitcoin sort of being the like coordinated central bank manipulation of the future, where it's like, oh, this is the new standard. This is the new monetary growth. You know, Bitcoin is the money. And its issuance and its inflation is the new interest rate in a lot of ways. So I sort of, you know, think that whatever the CBDC retail entity that comes out, whether that does just ends up being USDC, which is entirely possible. I think that's like the spookiest coin possible. You know, their paper is held by BNY Mellon, which was like the bank founded by Alexander Hamilton. It's like the oldest bank in, you know, it's spook world Freemason bank. And, you know, they hold all their paper. And, you know, we could very easily see, you know, I think Brian Armstrong said, you know, USDC is basically the de facto CBDC. And I think the CBDCs will really be these retail stable coins. And so whatever the interest rate is of those stable coins will kind of be the new short-term interest rate, you know, for people. You know, right now we don't get fucking jack shit. You know, we don't get anything in our checkings account, our savings account, you know. Remember when we kind of used to as kids? Like, I don't know, like,
how have we not learned this?
Right?
All of these bullshit yield chasing is a result of exactly that. All of those people who got wrecked by FTX were chasing yield or Luna or Celsius or whatever because it was ingrained in us from such an early age of like, oh yeah, you got to get interest. You got to get interest. Motherfucker, that interest in my checking account back in the day, I get it. You're a dinosaur. You're older than me. You might have had better interest rates when you were a kid. But like,
I'm a couple years older than you, motherfucker. Come on, man.
But like,
just because I'm balding a little, all right? Come on.
I didn't say that. You did.
I know.
No, but
I'm an honest man, if anything else.
The point I'm trying to make is like that was such a fallacy that was promised to us of like, yeah, get interest rate on your savings account at 0.2% or 0.1%. Like,
I mean, literally right now, it's like you have to put in like 6 figures and you get like 0.1%. And it's like, why would you ever do that? It's like, yeah, we are being forced to speculate in order just to keep up with inflation, which is just insane. It's like, you know, in the 80s, you know, when interest rates were 10%, it's like you could literally just save in dollars and it was a powerful economic tool. You know, we've been in this zero interest rate, you know, more, and even now it's like, okay, we jacked up rates faster than ever in history. It's like we're nothing. We're still, if you look at the chart of historical interest rates, we're still down in the tubes. Like we're not even at high interest rates at all. And it's looking like in a lot of ways things are breaking because we raised rates so fast. And I know a lot of people that I respect. And I think in many ways they're probably going to be right that it's like, well, the Fed doesn't give a shit about that. You know, they're trying to destroy the euro dollar market. You know, they're trying to destroy some of these things. They're going to keep jacking up rates and they don't care. And in many ways that's entirely true. And I think, you know, we'll continue to see that probably for a little bit longer than I think people think. But I mean, it's just the fucking math, man. I mean, we're going to have to print,
okay, Greg,
like we're going to have to service our debt. Yeah. Shout out Greg. We're going to have to fucking do it. It's just, there's no way. We're crushing demand, crushing it. we're not going to get tax receipts that are going to even come close to paying off what we need to. Like, tax receipts are going down as our interest rates are going up. And so our debt service is going up. We're going to have to refinance all this debt. We're going to have to print money at some point, of course. And when that happens, Bitcoin will fucking go to the moon and it will be great. But there's going to be a ton of destruction and a lot of bullshit that happens in that term. And the people that maybe don't hold Bitcoin might get fucked, and like, that's why there's a large part of me that's like, delay hyper Bitcoinization as long as possible. And I know it sucks and no one wants to hear that, but it's like, bro, you don't want hyper Bitcoinization to happen tomorrow. Like,
we're not ready.
You know what that would mean?
We're not ready.
No, we're not ready. A loaf of bread is $100, and yeah, Bitcoin's 150K. Great. That sucks. Like, no one wants that. Our parents are fucked. Our friends are fucked. The people that, even if they did listen to us a little bit about a little bit of Bitcoin, it's like, no, it's going to be messy as hell. So yeah, but it's inevitable. I mean, we're going to have to print money at some point. It's going to happen in our lifetime for sure. Probably, by the end of the decade, significant printing will have to happen, and it could happen at any time. Like, that's the thing. Something could break, and we might actually have to pivot quicker. I think they are raising rates to break things, and I think people don't understand that. They want to break things.
Well, so I'm going to challenge that. I think they want to break some things, but I think they're breaking more things, and the more things that they are breaking are not intentional. I think there are some casualties that have transpired. Silicon Valley Bank, a great example of that. They don't give a shit if Silvergate goes down. It was New York. What was the other bank? I'm spacing on it.
It was Silvergate, Silicon Valley Bank, and Signature.
Signature. Yes, the 3 S's.
Yeah.
They did not intend to have something impact Silicon Valley Bank, which is why Silicon Valley Bank was the one that got bailed out. Those depositors, those people. It was not Silvergate. It was not Signature. In fact, with Signature in particular, the conversation has been growing around. This was a very orchestrated attack on this bank. So I think there's more to come to your point. I don't see any.
I think that the FTX shit, the Luna shit, all of this, as far as I'm concerned, is the same thing. I mean, I think absolutely in many ways SBF is a mouthpiece or a state piece, and was sort of set up to like delegitimize and blow out the Bitcoin industry and the crypto industry in a lot of ways. He's a spook, like, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that stuff is downstream. It is the regulatory regime is here, and they're attacking, Bitcoin in the ways that they can, and the stable coins that they don't like. It's like, no, they're not going to let Luna, become their own money printer and print dollars. Boom, pegs attacked, 300K Bitcoin or 30K Bitcoin liquidated. Like FTX attacked, FTT attacked. Who is CZ working for? What is CZ's part in this? Binance is an incredibly important tool. BUSD, they created their own stable coin. There's just so much stuff going on that it's really hard to tell exactly like who's working for who and what and who, yeah, I mean, more things are going to break for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think some of it is, duration risk and bond mismanagement. But this is, again, downstream from, a ZIRP environment, zero interest rate, and, the Fed being like, we're not going to raise rates, we promise. And then, these banks buy a whole bunch of 10 years, 30 years to go after that yield, as we're talking about. It's the same shit. Banks are still they have to do the same shit. And if they're not getting any rates from, from short-term, from T-bills, then they have to go look for longer duration to get a little bit more yield. And then the Fed, oh shit, dot plots are getting an acne breakout. And then here we go. And we jack up rates faster than ever in the history of the United States, and things break. I mean, they can't manipulate the long side of the yield curve. 10 years and 30 years they're market driven. They can only manipulate the short side. And so you look at the yield curve from March of 2022, and it's exactly what you would want it to look like. It's down on the left side and right on the right side. As you go further out in the risk curve, you make more yield. Now, the most money you can make is in a 30-day T-bill. That's broken. That's bad. Like, that's not how it's supposed to be. And these banks that have billions of unrealized losses in these long-term durations, they're forced to sell them when people get spooked and they pull their money out. And then those losses compound. If they were able to just hold them to maturity, they won't lose money. But, economic costs is the name of the game. And, they lost billions and billions of dollars, and everyone is fractionalized reserved anyway. So they don't even have enough to cover, if a tenth of their, depositors want out. And that's what we saw happening. And, the Fed has come in and established, this new, BTFP or whatever.
The blanket policy, as I like to call it, of like,
Yeah.
we're going to cover everything, i.e. we're going to buy your assets that are no longer worth
at par.
They're no longer worth par, but we're going to pay par. Let me walk you through a little story. They did
please.
this in 2020. They didn't do it like this. They did it almost identical to this, where they were buying up bonds that were worth pennies on the dollar, not a fraction, pennies on the dollar, but they were paying a full dollar for all of these bonds. Now, they weren't from banks. They weren't the T-bills. They were just shitty corporate bonds. That was sort of perpetuated because of 2007, 2008. What did we see as a result of that? Massive inflation.
Yeah.
And we are literally witnessing two events. We are redoing QE in a very disastrous way. And you just had OPEC Plus come out and say, yo, we're cutting our oil production. We're trying to get rich over here in Saudi, bro. So you're about to see oil prices go up. You are starting to buy assets for pennies on the dollar. The only way, and people will make this case, and I will always just point out, the assets they are buying do not reach maturity. The soonest they would be is 2030 if they bought the 10-year treasuries in 2020. If we really stop and think about that, does that mean that you, not you, Mark, but you as a viewer who does not think that the Fed's QE policy is going to impact inflation, do you really feel confident enough to say, I can weather whatever storm happens from now to 2030? Holy shit, you must have a stack of Bitcoin that I need a fraction of.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, I mean, it's a little bit different. Like, and, they are tightening the balance in some ways. The Fed balance has gone down a tiny bit technically. I mean, this isn't necessarily QE in the same way it was with like the CARES Act or anything like that. Like, it is functionally different, but I think the end results of this type of policy and what it will do, it's going to centralize, like, why would, everyone's going to is going to arguably run into bigger banks. We're kind of seeing that there's a lot of outflows from these regional banks into the big four. It's not quite QE necessarily, but I think it's very similar. And I think, it's going to have, I think ultimately it will turn into QE. But right now we're in an uncharted, that's something, one of my favorite macro guys is Luke Roman. And he always says this at the beginning of his, the forest through the forest for the trees. Yeah, I always say that wrong. He always starts it off by saying, hey, there is no trader alive that has lived through an environment such as this. We've never seen it. And the dollar has complete, leverage over the entire world. We saw the euro go to sub dollar. We saw the pound go damn close to dollar parity. We saw, a lot of these big global currencies, rapidly decrease, and we saw the Dixie shoot up and go up like crazy. And now we're seeing that sort of stopping a little bit. It is kind of coming down the dollar, but the dollar, yes, still over leveraged against like the whole world economy is, but the dollar is over leveraged against itself. And this debt interest is sort of running away, and we're not going to be even come close to being able to pay off our debt, especially if there is an FDIC crisis. If there is a crisis where that fund, I think there's like 120 billion in it, and they can ask for another 100 billion. They can ask Congress to give another 100 billion, but to do that, they have to raise the debt limit. And that's we're knocking back up on that door again. And of course, they're going to raise the debt limit, of course. There's no question that they're going to do that. But how do they do that? And how do they actually service their debt? How do they actually, actually pay their, their expenses? How do we manage this budget while we're crushing tax receipts? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to think that we're not going to have to print our way out of it. But that could happen. If I've learned anything in Bitcoin, it's that it goes lower and takes longer than you would think. And I think the dollar system is kind of this. It's like we have clearly, road runner Wile E. Coyote'd off the cliff. Like we're running off the cliff. There's nothing below our feet, but we haven't fallen yet. And we could still keep running. It could be like this whole year, we could totally not print and totally raise interest rates more and break more things, but the dollar's still chugging along. But eventually, like it is going to have to break. World reserve currencies break. It's just a fact. It's just math. So that will happen at some point. But I think it's really like, I think Bitcoiners in particular, we want that acceleration almost to happen quicker because it's good for our bags.
That is so important.
Yeah. And it's hard to fight back that because there is a part of me that's like, as everything I've said this entire time, I fucking hate the state. I hate the dollar system and I want it to fucking burn in hell and let's scatter its ashes.
But
that said, what does that actually mean? Oh, that means all my friends are fucked. So many people that have put so much money into their businesses and all these things are going to get decimated. Huge recession, cataclysmic recession, possibly. And also too, I mean, if that is the case, and we are looking at this big recession here, it's like people aren't going to be buying Bitcoin right away. The first thing you do in a recession is not buy Bitcoin.
Toilet paper.
It might be the second thing you do. Maybe a second or third thing.
I mean, you and I are going to go buy Bitcoin, but like the masses are going to go to Costco and stock up on toilet paper and hand sanitizer.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and buy bullets and shit or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's they're going to have to print at some point. I mean, that's absolutely the case. It will just have to happen. Yeah, it's going to be weird as fuck.
So, like, I love you and I want to keep going.
I
almost want to, though, kind of say like, let's say our farewells and maybe revisit this conversation very, very soon.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, dude. Dude, this is the best.
Like,
we could do that. We could do this for another 3 hours. I guarantee you.
I haven't even started to ask you the questions I wrote down. We just went down rabbit holes, my friend. Like, I love talking to you. You are my
likewise,
genuinely
brother.
one of my favorite human beings in this space,
dude. My man, right back at you. Yeah, it was so fun hanging out with you down in Pack Bitcoin, man. It was we've we're working so hard. It was so nice to actually sit down and rip a spliff and just talk about so much shit. And you told me a lot about your home country, man. That was really cool. And my landlord is a based Persian, and got to talk to him about a lot of that stuff too. And that's really the birthplace of modern society and all this shit. And it was really cool to get all that. You don't get exposure to that all the time. And I cherish your friendship, brother. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man. What a fucking pleasure.
Grateful that you gifted me your time, and definitely going to be asking for more of it, because this conversation, we could have pulled an all-nighter just talking, my friend.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Fuck yeah. And as we get further into the basketball season, there'll be more. Dude, let's get if we have a Lakers Celtics final somehow, if you guys somehow manage to pull your shit together.
Pull our shit together, son. You're about to see the lowest seed NBA champion ever recorded in NBA history this year.
I mean, yes. Yeah, you cleared the books. You got rid of your duration risk of Russell Westbrook.
Dude, honestly, though, Russell Westbrook was saving it for that game last night. He started off so
that was
hot.
awesome.
He was so
that was kind of awesome when he hit that three in the court. His first three of the season, probably.
Dude, he went 2 for 2 for 3 in the first quarter. I was like,
yeah, what is happening?
Never when you were wearing purple and gold, bro.
Where was this? Yeah. I love Westbrook. I really do. I mean, he didn't make any sense with the Lakers.
No.
Like, what do you surround LeBron with?
Shooters.
3-and-D, baby. What Russell Westbrook? He is everything
that
you don't want to pair with LeBron. He needs the ball and he can't shoot.
My favorite,
that's the
My favorite picture just trolling the Lakers after they traded for Russ was someone took a screenshot of when they were playing the Rockets in the bubble, and Russ was on the Rockets,
Yeah.
and literally LeBron James is like down by the key and has turned his back, and Russ like he's just like go for it. Like I could live with Russell Westbrook shooting an elbow 3-pointer, and then the caption was, "This is your champion. Good luck."
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Every time Russ shoots, it's like, oh, that's a win for the defense. Like, yeah.
Marky Mark,
Well, fuck yeah,
how
man.
can people stay up to date with everything you're cooking, what you're working on?
Yeah. I'm on that Bird app, Mark Goodwin, little underscore between the W and the I. You can follow me also at the BTC Mag. Get the print magazine. There's a bunch of good shit in there. And fucking see you in Miami. Come hang out.
Use promo code QQQ and you can smoke a spliff with me in Miami.
Ooh, I like that. Fuck
It
yeah.
is that time of the night, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm going to go roll a spliff. You should go smoke some weed.